Hi, everybody. This is day 1090. 1090 days that we have been steadfast in our pursuit to find out what happened to Richard. We came in the game a little late, so it's minus 36 on 1090. Um, yeah, let's just be as positive as we can. Um, until you start really thinking about it and say 36 days that the U.S. Army betrayed us, that Fort Bliss betrayed us, that his command, his command betrayed us, the CID betrayed him and betrayed us, of course. And it went all the way up to General McConville. And I really, I know, you can talk about General Mealy, but we actually talked to General McConville. He's the one that put together the stage task force find Richard Halliday. He actually had that happen without the U.S. Army wearing their uniforms, fooling us, manipulating us, not even having an operational order. Um, how cold blooded can you get? Sending down Lieutenant General Donna Martin, how cold blooded can you get to show up at a meeting like that, not wearing a uniform, sitting in the middle of 30 people, 15 plus agencies, high paid agencies, high paid agents, high paid servants of these United States, and she sat in the middle of them without a uniform and crossed her legs like an Indian in the chair to lead this, to say, I want to hear about Richard, and did not tell us about Richard, did not say that Richard was a whistleblower, that his remains were already found, that there was already a um, a confession of his murder, um, that they, yeah, yeah, they were just manipulating everything. And I'm here tonight to come on here. I'm not allowed to get emotional, right? I have to um, keep focused because of what they did to Richard. Can you imagine Richard's going to CID to make complaints and the CID agent is in on it and exposes him and puts him in danger, puts a target on his back, and then he's constantly um, and severely retaliated against. And then the Army, the U.S. Army, when we don't give up and we want to know what happened to our son, tries to cover itself even more of all the evil deeds it did by sanitizing Richard's file of what they did to him, taking away out of his file, scrubbing his file of the Field Grade Article 15, the unjust retaliatory Field Grade Article 15 that they gave him with maximum punishment and then some, even the 15-6. Even Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe said, ooh, that was tough. That was bad. And then to scrub his file of the Chapter 14, right? The chaptering that they were doing to him. Um, and then to promote him. Here he is dead, dismembered, his body put in different locations. They covered this up using the mask of COVID. You understand that? They used the mask of COVID during 2020, 2021, and it's ongoing. The excuse of COVID. And they knew with what was going on in 2020 that they could at least try to get away with this egregious crime. What was the egregious crime? Yes, the murder of Richard, the premeditated murder of Richard, the command greenlit premeditated murder of Richard, but also that they could get away with the covering it up, that they didn't have to be held accountable for it, that they could fool the family, since the family was also, you have to realize, we were also affected in Florida by the COVID measures, what was going on. We do have, I wouldn't say a very large family, but we're a growing family. And our sons-in-laws, they were affected terribly by the COVID measures. So here I was, I'm not joking, and my neighbors could absolutely contest to this, that I was walking every day, morning and evening, around my neighborhood. And during that time, I was thanking God that Richard had a job, that Richard was cared for, not knowing that the CID were plotting to cover up for the forced disappearance, the abduction, really. When we get to the bottom of this Van Buren, 3400 Van Buren house, everything around that, and more, and more. It makes you speechless that while I'm thanking God, Richard is being murdered. Richard is being dismembered. And, here he was trying to go to CPS, the very organization that is supposed to be caring for the lives of children. And Richard showing frustration that they don't care. They're being funded to care for children. And Richard is frustrated. And they don't even, they're still not doing it, right? Because where is the CPS complaints that Richard was making? Even though they would implicate CPS, because they would, because where are their actions? And they did start looking into some things, but after Richard was murdered. And who knows if they took any actions. And you're asking, where is this mother getting this information? How does she know what happened to Richard? Well, I'm going to tell you, we have an alliance now within Fort Bliss that is concerned about what happened to Richard. And I want to share something before I tell you where we're getting this information, how we know this information, because our alliance is growing, our intel is growing, and, real heroes, real soldiers, real service members are coming out, right? Are coming out to help, are joining the alliance. And were then given the intel so that I could share it with you on this live stream. So let me make sure that I'm live. I should have done this to begin with, to make sure everyone can hear me. And it's once again a breaking news today. Breaking news. Okay, so thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much, Anicia, for your prayers and your love every day. That's our strength. That's our strength. So I want to share something. You know, God is really amazing how he brings everything together. Do you know that Richard was adopted from Poland? Okay. He was adopted from Poland and we lived in Germany. And we bought a little, very derelict. It was so derelict. You can see pictures of it on Facebook. A little cottage with not quite 2 acres in Ireland. And we worked very, very hard. We did so much of the work. It's just amazing how beautiful that property turned out um, from how we bought it. And that's where Richard grew up. And he had to help us work really hard to change that property into a derelict old cottage, 200-year-old cottage, to a little paradise there. Absolutely. And that house is located in the county of Longford, Ireland. And so when Richard joined the military, very proud of being from Longford, Ireland. The Longford leader has put in a story about Richard. And when he was the Distinguished Honor Graduate for Basic Training, it said the soldier Richard Halliday from Longford, Ireland. And Longford, Ireland is, a pretty poor county. It's in the Midlands, so you don't have the beautiful coastline. It's really a farming county, and but it's very rich in history. It's very rich in history. We loved it. We loved it there, um, and it has a very high point. I remember my husband's cousin, who I miss. Um, he told us, he said, your property is very high up here. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, oh, yes, you're very high. And if Noah's flood comes again, you'd be one of the last to go. That's what he said to us. And it is a very high point. Arda Mountain is very high elevation. And it was a Druid high point in Longford, Ireland. And so St. Patrick made his way there with St. Mel. St. Mel really um, uh, put his hand to the Christianization of County Longford. Um, and right behind our house, not right behind, but in walking distance to our home there, um, is St. Mel's Cathedral ruins. And in the middle of Longford town, the cathedral there is called Longford Cathedral, right? Or St. Mel's, sorry, St. Mel's Cathedral. And St. Mel um, is, of course, the nephew of St. Patrick. And we have the movie right now, The Sound of Freedom. And The Sound of Freedom, one of the huge participants to get that to the screen was Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson's mother was born in Longford, Ireland. Hence, her son's name is Mel, Mel Gibson. And he said something astonishing. Um, and I'm just going to play that. Not astonishing, but just really worth listening to. So let's play that real quick. See if I can get this on. Can you hear it? Doesn't want to be on. Why does it want to be on? Let's see. I can't get it to play. Why not? Oh, I know why.
They actually look and appeal to something great.
Okay, here we go. Let's play.
Real superheroes don't wear spandex, and they don't have a lot of 3D special effects, but they do operate on a higher level, on a supernatural level, and they actually look and appeal to something greater than themselves, and then they do something superhuman. Yeah.
Let's play that again.
Real superheroes don't wear spandex, and they don't have a lot of 3D special effects, but they do operate on a higher level, on a supernatural level, and they actually look and appeal to something greater than themselves, and then they do something superhuman. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I really think that what Richard did was absolutely remarkable for his age. He knew. I know he knew because he was homeschooled, and I was primarily, not his only, but primarily um, in control of his curriculum. And so I, I, I absolutely knew Richard. I mean, I tomato staked him I don't know how many times, right? I was with him all the time, all day long. Uh, Now, did he travel? Did he do other things? Did he go to Volkshochschule? Um, yes. Did he go to the Korean culture school? Yes. Did he go to learn barista in Dublin? Yes, with Allison. Did he learn music there in Longford and in Germany? Yes. Were we part of co-ops? Yes, but we were always together. Um, and so my point is that I knew him, and uh, I knew the spirit of him, and so I absolutely knew that what the CID, Marlon Soto, who we put in a criminal complaint against, um, was crazy. He was insane. The narrative that was put, now we know that it was on purpose. It was on purpose, with the COVID mandates and measures, with the false narratives um, that were negative against Richard being put into the security community, put into the law enforcement community. That's where they wanted to get the narrative. Of course, Stars and Stripes, I'll never forget this, Miss Thayer, right? Um, th- they were given the feed to say Richard is a drunk driver. They were given that. Okay. Um, when I read that, I was like, wow, what in the world? And that's exactly what I did. I know that doesn't sound so cool, but that was my amazement because I knew, because Lieutenant Colonel Ali Payne told me that, are you ready to hear about your son? Because I am going to brief this reporter of the Stars and Stripes. I'm going to brief her. Okay. They didn't want it out. And I even told Ali Payne that I would not talk to. Can you imagine? I was like, I want a win-win. I'm not going to talk to a lot of media. I just want you to tell me about my son. Okay? Can you imagine how vile they are? They're so vile because she absolutely knew that Richard's dismembered remains were already found, that they already had a confession, that they knew that Richard was murdered. They already knew at that time. And they fed the newspapers that kind of false information. And if you look it up, totally false. Totally false. So, but they wanted to get a false narrative out there about Richard, especially and most importantly in the security community, in the law enforcement community. They wanted to get the false narrative in there because anybody decent in the law enforcement community, anyone that had a moral backbone in the security or the law enforcement community, had to be thwarted when it came to Richard Halliday, had to be sabotaged, had to be brainwashed with circular things because they didn't know him. They wouldn't hear it and say, this is insanity. And then they were already weakened. Their hamstrings were already cut because of the COVID measures and mandates. And we got that really early on, that COVID was just hurting the search for our son in so many ways. And so you might ask, many of you trust me by now that I will really back up what I say with research and evidence and witnesses and screenshots over and over and over again before I say it. That I have for years been very, very nice. Did not even drop names. Protected Danae Katzen for a long time. Protected Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, who were bringing in young girls during COVID lockdown, okay, to have parties and whatnot, okay, into Fort Bliss. I did not drop Anthony Swafford's name, who is an MP, until the picture was so clear that he did the wrong thing. He needed to search for my son, no matter what. No matter what. Because Richard is a U.S. Army soldier. And just think about it. Now they are so guilty that they sanitized his file and promoted him twice. Lieutenant Colonel Allie Payne needs to apologize in her PAO. They've promoted Richard twice. Once in December of 2022 and then again this year in April of 2023. Sanitizing, scrubbing their wrongdoing, not Richard's wrongdoing. Their wrongdoing, their unjust measures, their failed cover-up of the murder of my son. That's what they're doing because they know that the criminal charges are mounting and mounting and mounting and mounting for what they did to Richard and after Richard and to us also. And Richard answered to a higher power and did something remarkable. Yes, he paid the ultimate price. So how do I know this? Like I said, a couple months ago, we're in the big leagues, and those big leagues, it gets really tough. The fight gets tough for justice because so much is at stake. But during that, some of the hypnosis, the swirly eyes, or the fear of the mounting and mounting criminal charges starts to weigh on people. And they decide to do what's right, or they break, right? They break or they do what's right. Because, to live lies like that, to live cover ups like that, to live accomplices to murder like that, to cover up to murder, to be the murderer, to live with that, right? It's hard, y'all. The weight is so heavy. And the best of people, the strongest of people break. It's so, can you imagine the FBI, the CID, the DEA, the DOJ, the CPS, the CBP, the ATF, all these agencies, Homeland Security, all of them, the weight of this cover up, the weight of these lies. And now we have, of course, the beautiful Sound of Freedom movie that's so many people have gone to, and I recommend it. It's not a movie that you go to because you want to go and see it. You go to it to expose the criminal syndicate at the highest levels of it's not even our government anymore, but whoever is leading this country, who has infiltrated. You expose the Trojan horse driver. That's what you're doing. You're exposing the Trojan horse. Okay. And so you go to this movie to support it, to make sure everyone knows that you've got it. You've got it. You understand what's going on, that children are being trafficked. And not only that, but then they're connected to the illegal drug, whatever. It's not even illegal anymore, because they're doing it, getting away with it inside the barracks, making the barracks a marketplace for illegal drugs. And then also we have the legal drugs that should be illegal, the way they're doing, just giving them out like candy, after they get their mental hands on our volunteer sons and daughter and turn them into PTSD basket cases, and then try to train them to suicide, or try to make them so afraid they're shaking, they're looking like mental cases, like the paralegal that I ran into, shaking like a leaf, like Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, who absolutely has a conscience, but went along anyway. Okay? Went along anyway. Same thing with Brigadier General Stewart. He has a conscience too, but he went along anyway. And they pulled him down. They pulled him down into that abyss and twisted him. And the last time I saw him, he looked all deranged, absolutely deranged. So, you make that Faustian deal. You make the deal with the devil so you can have some stars and stripes, and then the weight crushes you. And so, some people try to get out from underneath that weight, and this is where we're getting the information. So we have intel now, and the intel is coming from the security community there on Fort Bliss. Okay. And, so we're in contact. Hold on. So we're in contact with Brigadier General Eisenhower, not Brigadier General, Major General Eisenhower, who is the command general there, on Fort Bliss. And let me see. I want to get my notes up. And we're in contact, and we really ask you for prayers for him, okay? Say some prayers for Major General Eisenhower. And I know that so many of you are probably saying, why are you praying for him? Look what Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe did. Look what Brigadier General Stewart did. Look what Lieutenant General Donna Martin did. Look what General Garrett has done. Look what General McConville has done. These are crimes against humanity. These are worthy of the death penalty. Okay? Look what they have done. They have betrayed us to the detriment of so many lives. So many. Don't get emotional, Pat. Don't get emotional. Stay calm and tell these people what they need to know. And that is, there's a problem. And we all know that it is a systemic problem. But I want to talk about the problems. The problem at Fort Bliss. In Fort Bliss, around Fort Bliss, Fort Bliss, El Paso, Texas. Because this is where our intel is coming from. The intel is coming from within Fort Bliss at the top security level. Okay? And absolutely, it has been very high source that the COVID mandates and measures were absolutely a useful tools to deceive, to mask. I like the word mask for that. The irregularities in our son's case. I'm going to use the word irregularities. Do I want to use crimes? Do I want to use the evil? I'm going to use the word irregularities, right? They were used to deceive, to obscure, to mask the irregularities in our son's case, like finding his remains, like the state of his remains, like the finding of, y'all, we have information that a car is involved. A car. They lied to us so much, I can't even tell you. And we wanted to believe them. We tried to believe them, but they lied to us. They lied to us so bad. And that the crime at Fort Bliss, on Fort Bliss, is so bad that it was used to conduct the retaliation. Because you have to understand, this is part of JAG. Judge Robert Shook. Remember that name. Judge Robert Lee Shook. Okay? We've written him. Pray for him. He needs to come clean. Because, see, the real battle, and I was talking to my son about this, is not a battle of arms, right? It's not these bang up, bomb up, kill 'em up wars. The real battle is in the courtroom. is with the judges. Okay? Because a land without justice is just a criminal syndicate. It doesn't say a land without a fearsome army, right? It says a land without justice. And so the warrants for the probable cause affidavits, the warrants to search the grounds in order to pick up the remains of our son, all of this stuff, okay? That had to come from a judge. And I'm piecing this all together in my own mind. The ramification, the weight of what is being told to us. Because the crime on Fort Bliss was used to conduct a retaliation against one of our key witnesses, a very important key witness, a crucial witness in our son's case. To retaliate against a key witness in a missing soldier's case, the way that they did, and that key witness having to become a whistleblower, just like Richard. Of course, our son is now murdered. He wasn't protected. He wasn't protected on Fort Bliss. He wasn't protected by the security on Fort Bliss. He wasn't protected by this fearsome army on Fort Bliss. He wasn't protected. Matter of fact, it was quite the opposite. They retaliated against him. They premeditated against him. They murdered him. And then they covered it up. And then they threatened and intimidated and used asymmetric warfare tactics and military operations against a family that wanted to know, where's their son? Where's my son? They orchestrated this retaliation against a crucial witness in our son's case. And we know that it was criminal because they did it without a packet. Without a packet, that means they did it without investigation. Without an investigation, without notifying. No notice. No, that means that there was no due process. Right? No investigation, no documentation of the very serious measures and severe measures used against one of our key and crucial witnesses. This is clearly a violation of protocol. So we have that from someone within the security community team, the force, the security force there at Fort Bliss. And that's not all. The other irregularities is the irregularities with the pre-selection process of the new director for the security at Fort Bliss. Additionally, there is more irregularities in the case of the 14-year-old girl, right? The 14-year-old girl, which those irregularities we are sending to Major General Eisenhower to let him know that we have that intel. Okay? It's not pretty, y'all. It's so disturbing because we know that she was being raped. We know that through this movie, which is a true movie, The Sound of Freedom, that they are just not raped once. That the nights are very long and they're up to no good. But that was not an I can tell you this, it was not an isolated occurrence. But that's not the irregularity that we're sending Major General Eisenhower. We know more. And we also know about the irregularities in the surveillance system, specifically the cameras for the gates, the license plate cameras for the gate. We know about the spikes. We know about the discrepancies related to the new arms room. Which, every time you say arms room, you think of Vanessa Guillen, you're like, please. And remember that psychic that said, oh, Richard's remains, part of his remains are inside the arms room. Maybe I owe her an apology. Is there something in the arms room that they need to build a new arms room? And that they would do it illegally? That they would do it with, I shouldn't say legally, but with irregularities, that they wouldn't follow protocols. This is, and there's more, y'all. There's more. So we absolutely have, you don't have to doubt, that we absolutely have an alliance, that we absolutely have intel, and that Major General Eisenhower needs to be prayed for because I can't even imagine the pressure that he is feeling because we have a Trojan horse within our Pentagon, within our Department of Justice, within our FBI, within our agencies, right? They are compromised. They're all compromised. And I don't know if he is or not. And that's why we need to give him a chance. Innocent until proven guilty, right? We know that he has not been briefed properly because they are afraid. The JAG admitted that they are afraid to brief Major General Eisenhower properly because they're afraid of retaliation themselves, the repercussions themselves. So he's not getting the briefings that he needs, that he should get. And we know that Fort Bliss has a major problem. How do we know? That's easy. That's easy to demonstrate. Let me get that up. I don't know if y'all know this. Let me see if I have it right here. Yep. Okay, so let me show you this. Uh-oh, something went wrong already. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so I'll just tell it to you. The American that defected into North Korea, he chose to go into North Korea from at the DMZ. I know a lot about the DMZ. My dad served at the DMZ. My dad was just a few years back before he passed away. R.I.P. Dad, I miss you so much. He was at the DMZ. He was gave a speech at the DMZ, cried at the DMZ. My dad had a great heart. He was not cold blooded. He was not cold blooded like Sean Bernabe. He was not cold blooded like McConville. He was not cold blooded like Jay Pollan. He cared. And this soldier at the DMZ went into North Korea. Why? Because they were going to send him back to Fort Bliss. He's from El Paso, y'all. They were going to send him back to Fort Bliss. And he didn't want to go. I can't believe that they got rid of that. Well, I can believe it. They got rid of that. I just had it. I just was reading it. Yeah. So, which is interesting because the other defector, McIntyre, remember him? He served at Fort Bliss and then went to the Ukraine to spy for Russia and then defected to Russia. He was also Fort Bliss. Something is wrong at Fort Bliss. Where is the esprit de corps? Where is the no soldier left behind? Where is the army of one and the esprit de corps, the love for your country, the duty, the loyalty, the respect, the selfless service, the honor, the integrity, the personal courage? Where is that? The creeds. There's a problem at Fort Bliss. And it's very clear. I don't think I have to convince anybody. So, thank you, Cindy. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you, Anicia. So this is the point that I wanted to make today, and I am going to talk a little bit about Anthony Swaffer too before. Um, uh, yeah, I need to talk about Anthony Swafford. I know I need to talk about CID. Okay, we know about Tavita Nusa. We know about Lalani Hart. We know about the criminal activity. We know about Marlon Soto. Okay, Marlon Soto is a big deal, very big deal here because he just, oh my gosh. We know that during the stage task force find Richard Halliday meeting, um, I reported. It was my job to do that from the social media um, to say, look, they are leaking out of the CID. There's a leak out of the CID. And here's the proof. And I presented the proof at that meeting. And CID leader Marlon Soto got up from his chair and snatched the paper from me. Not snatched. Snatch is not a good word, but really, it was quick. But I willingly handed it to him, but he was like, I got to have that. Um, and everybody was there, and they allowed Marlon Soto to say, I will take care of that. That means that was a breach in the protocol, that the CID was allowed to investigate itself. And the FBI, many of them, were sitting right there. And they all knew. I didn't know. I'm just a mom. We're talking about trained, seasoned law enforcers. They all knew that what happened was wrong. And they all knew what was happening was wrong. And they didn't tell us. Um, so, absolutely, the CID, I need to talk about that a lot. That meeting, I need to talk about a lot. And General McConville needs to be held accountable for that. He needs to be stripped from his uniform, stripped from every star, every one of those 4 stars. And he needs to be, the court martial, yes. He, tip of the iceberg, committed crimes against humanity. It's so bad, y'all. It's so bad. But I want to talk about Anthony Swafford, not to pick on him, okay? I totally am aware that he was hypnotized, right? He was hypnotized. And I don't want to make excuses for him. But he was absolutely hypnotized by the times, by his position. He's young, very young. And things are so bad around him. It's like that paranormal, that paralegal, the paranormal paralegal. Yeah, paranormal. The paralegal. I'm not, I tend to make excuses for them because I know that General McConville could have changed everything. Everything. Okay? Everything. The whole, look, one good leader. It doesn't take time, that much time at all. You have to understand you can have a bad leader and they can make really terrible changes very swiftly. But you can have a good leader and they can make changes swiftly. So I absolutely hold General McConville when you're talking about the military. This is not a civilian world. This is a military world. So it's very different, and that's why I try to be a little bit more understanding to the very terrible thing that Anthony Swafford did in my son's case. And I'm sure in many other cases. But the point that I want to make is from the guard mount to the military police, the CID, the command, the decision makers, like McConville, launched a smear campaign on Richard. And with the help of the COVID measure mandates, with the help of the crooked, compromised situation at Fort Bliss, it was like normal not to follow protocol, normal not to follow standard operating procedures. They thought they could get away with this smear campaign on Richard. And more, y'all. And it's coming. More is coming. And you're going to be shocked. Because they absolutely smeared Richard. And they went after him continuously and severely on every front to retaliate, to get him in suicide mode or that they would just shut him down. Shut up and let us be criminals. That's what they wanted. That border is very profitable when it comes to human trafficking, when it comes to child sex trafficking, when it comes to child pornography, when it comes to any pornography, when it comes to drugs, and of course, weapon smuggling, equipment smuggling, ammunition smuggling, absolutely many more things that I don't even know about. It's very profitable. And because of all of that, then you had instances of heartlessness, cold-bloodedness towards one another. When you have that much criminal activity going, then you're very heartless with one another. You don't care. You really don't. You're just trying to survive. And Richard wasn't from that. He still had oomph. He still had self-worth. He didn't have the pressure of the sins on him, that heavy weight. And so he went there, and that's why he became a whistleblower. He wasn't compromised. And that's why he could become a whistleblower. And that was an amazing, wonderful thing. And maybe Mel Gibson will get some word about the soldier from Longford County, the home of St. Mel. Maybe. That would be a wonderful thing. So that's thank you so much, everyone, for coming on. And like I said, it's going to get tricky. But things are happening behind the scenes that are becoming very positive. And I don't know how long it's going to take, y'all. I really don't. It can be in the next hour, and it can be in who knows. It all depends on who wants to come out from that heavy burden. The heavy burden. Who wants to get rid of that heavy burden? Who doesn't want to be cracked under the heavy burden? Destroyed under the heavy burden of the criminal syndicate and the guilt, or some people don't have guilt, the ugliness of their lives. So I don't know. So right now we really ask for letters to Major General Eisenhower. We are writing him just about daily right now because of the breaking news. Not because we just want to bug him, because of the breaking news that's coming out of his security force at Fort Bliss. His security force that are more willing to talk with us than with him because they feel threatened with retaliation and fear to brief him properly. So thank you so much. And make sure I have any questions. Thank you. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Um, yeah. Write letters, share, and we love you. Bye bye.